TLDR, my mother secretly accessed my investment portfolio worth $127,000 and liquidated everything to fund her luxury lifestyle. The ensuing legal battle revealed decades of financial manipulation and forced me to choose between family loyalty and justice. My name is Alex, and I'm 29 years old. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my mother, Catherine Morrison, had somehow gained access to my investment portfolio and liquidated $127,000 worth of carefully accumulated stocks, bonds, and cryptocurrency. When I confronted her about it, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You owe us this much and more after everything we've sacrificed for you." That moment shattered the last illusion I had about our relationship. But to understand how we got here, I need to take you back to the beginning of what would become a 15-year journey through financial manipulation, family betrayal, and ultimately, my fight for independence. Growing up in suburban Atlanta, money was always a weapon in the Morrison household. My mother, Catherine, worked as a real estate agent specializing in luxury properties, while my father, David, managed a small but successful accounting firm. On paper, we were solidly middle class with a household income that should have provided comfortable living for our family of 4. In reality, my parents treated money like a drug they could never get enough of, and their children became unwilling suppliers to feed their addiction. Catherine had expensive tastes that far exceeded their actual income. Designer handbags from Chanel and Louis Vuitton, weekly luxury spa treatments at the Ritz-Carlton, European vacations every summer, and a new BMW every 2 years. When their legitimate income couldn't support her lifestyle, she became increasingly creative about finding additional funding sources. That creativity usually involved exploiting her children in ways that would take me years to fully understand and decades to escape. My earliest memory of financial manipulation happened when I was 8 years old, during what should have been an innocent childhood experience of learning to save money. I had been diligently saving allowance money in a wooden treasure chest my grandfather had given me for my birthday, dreaming of buying a remote-controlled helicopter I'd seen at Toys R Us. The helicopter cost $89, which seemed like a fortune to my 8-year-old mind, but I was determined to earn it through patience and hard work. For 6 months, I carefully deposited every dollar I earned from small chores around the house. Taking out the trash, feeding our golden retriever Max, helping Dad organize his home office. I added birthday money from relatives, quarters found in couch cushions, even the occasional dollar bill discovered in the pocket of jacket I hadn't worn in months. The weight of the coins and bills accumulating in that wooden chest gave me such pride and sense of accomplishment. I would count and recount my savings every few days, watching the total creep closer to my goal. One morning in March, I rushed to my bedroom before school to count my money again, perhaps to see if I finally had enough for the helicopter. Instead, I found the chest completely empty. Not a single coin remained. I searched frantically through my room, thinking perhaps I had moved the money for safekeeping and forgotten. When that search proved fruitless, I ran downstairs in tears to find my mother. Catherine was in the kitchen, preparing her usual elaborate breakfast while simultaneously checking her phone for new luxury real estate listings. When I tearfully asked about my missing savings, she paused her morning routine and looked at me with what I now recognize as practiced sympathy, mixed with mild annoyance. "Oh, sweetie," she sighed dramatically, setting down her coffee cup and kneeling to my level. "I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to explain last night, but the family encountered some unexpected expenses, and we needed to borrow your savings temporarily. Don't worry, honey," she continued, stroking my hair in a way that felt more possessive than comforting. "Mommy will pay you back with interest within the week. You're helping the family, just like a responsible little man. I'm so proud of you for understanding." But I didn't understand. At 8 years old, I couldn't comprehend why adult financial problems required taking a child's carefully saved money without permission. The helicopter dream died that day, but more importantly, something shifted in my understanding of family relationships and trust. When I asked about repayment a week later, Catherine looked genuinely confused. "What money, sweetie? I don't remember borrowing anything from you. Are you sure you didn't spend it on something and forget? You know how forgetful you can be." The gaslighting had begun, though I wouldn't learn that term for many years. The money never came back, and neither did any subsequent savings I managed to accumulate throughout my childhood. This incident established a pattern that would define my relationship with my parents for the next 2 decades. Catherine would identify financial resources I possessed, create justifications for claiming them, and then rewrite history to make me question my own memory and perception. By the time I was 10, Catherine's methods had evolved beyond simple theft. She began implementing what she called family contribution policies, which were elaborate systems designed to extract money from her children while making us feel grateful for the opportunity to help. Every birthday gift, every dollar earned from neighborhood jobs, every Christmas money from grandparents came with automatic expectations about family sharing. "Now, Alex," she would say whenever I received money, "remember that we're a family unit. Individual wealth creates jealousy and division. The Morrison family shares everything equally because we love each other." This philosophy, conveniently, only applied to money flowing from children to parents, never the reverse. When I was 12, I had learned to hide money in places Catherine would never think to look. Inside book covers where I had carefully cut out hiding spaces, taped under my desk drawer, even buried in a small waterproof container in our backyard under the azalea bush. These hiding spots felt like small victories in an ongoing war I was only beginning to understand I was fighting. Catherine's determination to locate and claim my hidden resources became almost obsessive. I would return from school to find my room subtly rearranged. Books moved slightly from their original positions. Furniture shifted just enough to suggest searching had occurred. She never admitted to these searches, but the evidence was unmistakable. My privacy had become another casualty in her quest for financial control. The situation escalated dramatically when I turned 15 and began working at Tony's Pizza Palace, a local restaurant within walking distance of our house. I told my parents I was staying after school for computer club, then sneaking to work shifts that began at 4 p.m. and ended at closing time. Every penny I earned went into a savings account I had secretly opened using my friend Mike's older brother as a co-signer, since I was too young to open an account independently. For 8 months, I successfully maintained this deception, accumulating nearly $2,400 through weekend and evening shifts. The money represented more than financial value. It symbolized my first real taste of independence and self-determination. I had plans for that money, a better computer for school, perhaps even a used car when I turned 16, and most importantly, a safety net that my parents couldn't access. Catherine discovered my employment through a chance encounter with Tony's wife at the grocery store. Mrs. Castellano mentioned how proud she was of Alex's strong work ethic and how much her husband appreciated having such a reliable teenage employee. Catherine's reaction when she confronted me that evening revealed the true depth of her need for financial control. "How dare you get a job without family permission?" she raged, her usual composed mask slipping entirely. "Every dollar you earn in this house belongs to this family first. You're a minor living under our roof, eating our food, using our electricity. Your labor is our property until you turn 18. The legal language she used suggested this confrontation had been planned, researched, perhaps even discussed with David beforehand. What followed was a systematic dismantling of my financial independence that left me feeling powerless and betrayed. Catherine marched me to the bank the next morning, armed with my birth certificate and her parental authority, and demanded access to my account. The bank manager, clearly uncomfortable with the family dynamic, but legally bound to comply with parental rights, allowed her to close the account and transfer all funds to a family account under her control. "This money will be saved for your college education," she announced, while I watched my 8 months of labor disappear into her possession. Parents are much better at managing finances than teenagers. You'll thank me someday for teaching you about family responsibility. Not a penny of that money ever made it to college expenses. Within 2 months, Catherine had purchased a new designer purse, scheduled another spa weekend, and booked a vacation to Charleston that she claimed was necessary for her mental health and therefore benefited the entire family. My younger sister Emma, now 26, experienced similar treatment throughout her teenage years, though Catherine's methods had evolved to become even more psychologically sophisticated. With Emma, the emphasis shifted from outright theft to emotional manipulation and guilt-based coercion. Catherine had learned that direct confrontation with me had created resistance and suspicion, so she developed more subtle approaches with her younger daughter. "Emma, sweetie," Catherine would say whenever my sister received money, "I've been thinking about how lucky our family is to have children who care about each other. If you loved your family, you would want to help pay for Alex's academic supplies. Or, Daddy's business is struggling because the economy is so difficult, and we might lose the house unless we can cover the mortgage payment this month." These conversations always occurred privately, creating an illusion of special trust and mature responsibility. Emma, being more compliant by nature and younger when the manipulation began, often handed over birthday money, babysitting earnings, and even graduation gifts without resistance. She became convinced that family meant sharing everything, including resources you'd earned yourself, and that questioning these expectations demonstrated selfishness and lack of family loyalty. The contrast in our responses to Catherine's financial manipulation created additional family tension. Emma's compliance was frequently held up as an example of proper family values, while my resistance was characterized as evidence of selfishness and ungrateful behavior. "Your sister understands what family means," Catherine would say during her frequent lectures about my failures to contribute adequately to family welfare. "Emma puts family first because she loves us. You could learn something from her generosity." This dynamic created a wedge between Emma and me that would persist well into adulthood. She genuinely believed that Catherine's financial expectations were normal and healthy, while I was increasingly convinced that our family's relationship with money was deeply dysfunctional. Our different perspectives on the same treatment would eventually force us to navigate completely different relationships with our parents. The financial exploitation intensified dramatically during my college years, when Catherine's sense of entitlement to my resources reached its peak. I had worked 3 jobs during my senior year of high school: morning newspaper delivery, afternoon grocery store stocking, and weekend landscaping, and saved enough money to cover my freshman year tuition at Georgia Tech. The $12,000 I had accumulated represented the most money I had ever possessed and felt like genuine independence from my parents' financial manipulation. 2 weeks before classes were scheduled to start, Catherine delivered news that would define my relationship with family for years to come. She informed me with remarkable casualness that she had borrowed $8,000 from my college fund to cover what she described as unexpected medical expenses that couldn't be delayed. "Your father needs emergency dental work," she explained, while reorganizing her already perfectly organized jewelry collection, avoiding eye contact as she spoke. "3 root canals and crown replacements that our insurance won't cover. We simply don't have $8,000 available for dental emergencies, and your college money was the only accessible resource." The explanation felt rehearsed and hollow, especially since David's teeth looked perfectly fine to me, and he had shown no signs of dental pain or emergency medical appointments. When I asked to see the dental bills or insurance explanations, Catherine became defensive and angry. "How dare you question family medical expenses?" she snapped. "Your father is in pain, and you're worried about paperwork? We'll get student loans to cover your tuition. It's practically free money anyway, and you'll have plenty of time to pay it back once you're earning an engineer's salary." Those student loans would follow me for years, accumulating interest and creating financial stress that could have been entirely avoided. More painfully, I later discovered through Catherine's enthusiastic Facebook posts that her medical emergency had actually been a luxury vacation to Napa Valley, complete with wine tastings, 5-star restaurant meals, and a spa package that cost exactly $8,000. The photographs of my stolen college money funding her vacation were posted with gleeful captions about treating ourselves to some much-needed family time and investing in our marriage and mental health. The casual cruelty of posting evidence of her theft while knowing I was struggling with unexpected student debt revealed a level of narcissistic behavior that I was only beginning to understand. Despite these devastating setbacks, I remained determined to build financial independence that my parents could never touch again. My computer science studies at Georgia Tech became more than academic pursuit. They represented my escape route from family financial manipulation. I maintained a 3.7 GPA while working part-time jobs to cover living expenses that my parents had promised to help with, but never did. Every assignment, every exam, every late-night study session was motivated by my determination to build a career that would provide complete financial independence. I studied programming languages, software development methodologies, and emerging technologies with an intensity that impressed even my professors. My academic success wasn't just about learning, it was about survival and freedom. The work schedule I maintained during college was brutal but necessary. I worked as a teaching assistant for introductory computer science courses, providing tutoring and grading assistance that paid enough to cover basic living expenses. Weekend shifts at a local electronics store provided additional income, while freelance web development projects filled any remaining free time. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, but financial independence felt worth any sacrifice. During my junior year, a marketing internship at a rapidly growing software startup became my salvation and first glimpse of the professional world I was fighting to enter. My supervisor, Michael Chen, recognized potential in me that I barely saw in myself. He mentored me through complex projects, recommended me for a paid position, and wrote a glowing recommendation letter that would help me land my first real job after graduation. Michael also provided something I had never experienced from adults in my life: financial mentorship without exploitation. He taught me about investment strategies, retirement planning, and building wealth through patience and discipline. Most importantly, he demonstrated that successful adults could discuss money without manipulation, coercion, or hidden agendas. Financial independence isn't just about having money, he explained during one of our mentorship conversations. It's about having choices, the ability to make decisions based on your values rather than financial desperation. That's real freedom, Alex, and it's worth working for. I graduated from Georgia Tech with job offers from 3 major technology companies. After careful consideration, I chose a position at a rapidly growing software startup in Austin, Texas, specifically because it put 1,200 miles between me and my parents. The physical distance felt as important as the financial opportunity in my quest for genuine independence. For the first time in my life, I controlled my own finances completely. I lived modestly in a shared apartment with two other software engineers, drove a reliable used Honda Civic that I paid for in cash, and put every spare dollar into savings and investments. My computer science background helped me research stocks and cryptocurrency, and I was particularly successful with early investments in emerging technology companies that my technical knowledge helped me evaluate. My daily routine became a testament to financial discipline that would have seemed obsessive to most people my age. I prepared all meals at home to avoid restaurant expenses, bought clothing exclusively from thrift stores and outlet malls, and found free entertainment through hiking, reading, and open-source software projects. Every purchase required justification. Every expense was tracked and analyzed. This extreme frugality wasn't driven by stinginess but by trauma. Having experienced financial violations throughout my childhood and young adulthood, I needed complete control over every dollar to feel secure. The savings account balance became my measure of safety and independence, concrete proof that I was beyond my parents' reach. Over 7 years in Austin, through careful planning, aggressive saving, and smart investing, I built a portfolio worth $127,000. This wasn't just money to me. It represented freedom, security, and validation that I could succeed despite my family's attempts to sabotage my financial independence. The portfolio was carefully diversified across growth stocks, dividend-paying investments, cryptocurrency holdings, and bond funds. Every investment decision was researched extensively. I spent hours analyzing company financial statements, reading industry reports, and monitoring market trends. The portfolio's growth represented not just financial success, but intellectual achievement, proof that I could build wealth through knowledge and discipline rather than manipulation and exploitation. The $127,000 represented specific dreams and goals that extended beyond mere accumulation. I had calculated exactly how much I needed for a down payment on a modest house in Austin's emerging neighborhoods. I had researched the costs of starting my own software consulting company and knew my savings provided adequate runway for entrepreneurial risk-taking. Most importantly, the money represented security that my parents could never touch, threaten, or claim as their own. Throughout these 7 years of building financial independence, my relationship with Catherine and David remained strained but nominally civil. They called monthly, usually with financial requests disguised as family emergencies that had become so predictable I could anticipate them based on seasonal patterns and major expenses. "Alex, honey, it's Mom." Catherine would begin these calls with artificial warmth that immediately put me on guard. "I hope you're doing well in Austin. Listen, I hate to ask, but we're facing a temporary cash flow problem. Dad's business had a slow month, and we're behind on the car payment. Could you loan us $1,500 just until payday? We'll pay you back with interest, I promise." These requests followed consistent patterns that revealed careful planning rather than genuine emergencies. The amounts requested always aligned with Catherine's luxury purchases rather than basic needs. The timing coincided with her favorite shopping seasons or vacation planning periods. The promises of repayment came with elaborate explanations about interest rates and payment schedules that were never honored. After losing $5,000 to them 3 years earlier for what Catherine claimed were emergency medical bills, but later discovered had funded a gambling trip to Atlantic City, I finally established firm boundaries that I maintained religiously. No loans, no gifts, no financial assistance under any circumstances. These boundaries earned me the label of selfish and ungrateful in family conversations that Emma dutifully reported back to me. "Your sister would help us in a crisis," Catherine would say during these increasingly tense phone calls. "Emma understands what family means. She knows that family members support each other through difficult times. But you've always been cold, Alex. Even as a child, you were stingy with everything. Your toys, your allowance, your affection." The character assassinations became more creative and vicious as my financial boundaries remained firm. I was accused of being materialistic, greedy, selfish, ungrateful, cold-hearted, and fundamentally damaged by my pursuit of financial independence. Catherine developed elaborate theories about how my move to Texas had corrupted my values and turned me against family loyalty. "Money has changed you," became her favorite accusation. "You used to be such a sweet boy, but now all you care about is your bank account. It's sad, really. You're going to end up alone and bitter because you chose money over family." These conversations typically followed the same script: initial pleasantries, gradual transition to financial requests, emotional manipulation when I declined, character attacks when manipulation failed, and finally threats about family consequences for my selfishness. I learned to recognize the pattern and end calls before reaching the most toxic phases. The monthly contact gradually decreased to quarterly text messages, then near silence, as Catherine realized that sustained contact without financial benefit wasn't worth her investment. This reduction in communication felt like relief rather than loss, confirmation that our relationship had always been primarily transactional from her perspective. When the invitation to Emma's wedding arrived last month, I almost discarded it immediately. 3 years of minimal contact had given me emotional space to heal from childhood trauma and build healthy relationships with people who valued me for reasons unrelated to my financial resources. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, had helped me process the complex emotions around family loyalty versus self-protection. Family relationships built on exploitation aren't actually family relationships, she had explained during one of our sessions. They're business arrangements disguised as love. You have the right to expect genuine care and respect from family members, not just demands for financial support. Dr. Mitchell suggested that attending Emma's wedding with strong boundaries might provide closure and possibly reveal whether any authentic family relationships were salvageable. You can engage without being vulnerable, she advised. Observe rather than participate emotionally. Use the opportunity to gather information about whether these relationships are worth preserving. Against my better judgment, and driven by lingering hope that Emma's major life milestone might create opportunities for healthy family connection, I confirmed my attendance. The decision felt risky but necessary. One final attempt to determine whether any genuine family bonds existed beneath the financial manipulation that had defined our relationships. Catherine had been unusually warm during our phone conversations leading up to the wedding, expressing genuine seeming interest in my life in Austin and appearing proud of my career success in ways that felt different from her typical transactional communication. She asked detailed questions about my work projects, my apartment, my social life, and my future plans without immediately transitioning to financial requests. I know we've had our differences over the years, she said during one particularly encouraging conversation, but you're my son, and I want to support your dreams and aspirations. Maybe I haven't always shown that properly, but watching you build such a successful career makes me incredibly proud. The warmth felt genuine enough that I began cautiously hoping that age, Emma's wedding, and years of distance had created space for Catherine to develop healthier perspectives on family relationships. When she suggested I stay at their house for the wedding weekend to save money on hotels and spend more time together as a family, I agreed, despite internal warnings that staying in their house represented unnecessary risk. We have plenty of space, and it would mean so much to have you home for a few days, Catherine insisted. Emma would love having her big brother nearby during such an important weekend. It could be a chance for our family to reconnect and heal some old wounds. The wedding weekend in Savannah started more promisingly than I had dared to hope. Catherine and David had clearly made significant improvements to their home that suggested either genuine financial stability or access to credit that concerned me, but wasn't my responsibility to monitor or control. The house showed evidence of professional renovation, landscaping, and decorator touches that spoke of substantial investment. Catherine introduced me to wedding guests as my successful son, the software engineer, bragging about my job and independence with apparent genuine pride rather than her typical calculations about financial opportunities. She asked thoughtful questions about my work challenges, my apartment in Austin, and my plans for career advancement without immediately steering conversations toward money. During the wedding reception, Catherine pulled me aside for what felt like the most honest conversation we had shared in years. We sat in the hotel's quiet bar area while the reception continued in the main ballroom, and for the first time she seemed to acknowledge past mistakes and express genuine remorse. "I know I made serious mistakes when you were growing up," she said, tears appearing in her eyes that looked genuine rather than performative. "Money was always tight, and I didn't handle financial stress well. I know I sometimes made decisions that hurt you and Emma, and I've regretted those choices for years." She continued with what sounded like a carefully considered apology. "I want you to know how proud I am of the man you've become. Despite the mistakes I made as a mother, you've built an incredible life and career. You're independent, successful, and strong in ways that inspire me." The conversation felt like the mother-son connection I had craved my entire life. We talked for over an hour about my investments, my career goals, my plans to eventually buy a house in Austin, and my hopes for starting my own consulting company within the next few years. Catherine listened attentively, asked insightful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in my life, rather than calculating financial opportunities. Caught up in the warmth of what felt like genuine maternal interest and acceptance, I found myself sharing details about my portfolio that I had never told anyone, including the specific amounts I had accumulated and my investment strategies. The conversation felt therapeutic and healing, finally having a parent who was proud of my financial success rather than threatened by it. "You've always been so smart with money," Catherine said admiringly. "Even as a little boy, you were careful and thoughtful about saving. I should have encouraged that instead of, well, instead of handling things the way I did. That night, I slept in my childhood bedroom for the first time in nearly a decade, surrounded by memories of the boy who had learned to hide money from his own parents. The room had been redecorated in neutral tones that erased most traces of my childhood, but the basic layout remained unchanged. The same window where I used to watch for Catherine's car to return from her spending sprees. The same closet where I had hidden savings from her searches. Exhausted from the emotional intensity of the wedding and my conversation with Catherine, I fell into the deepest sleep I'd experienced in months. The combination of travel fatigue, alcohol from the reception, and emotional vulnerability left me more unconscious than asleep, a detail that would prove catastrophically significant. I woke up on Sunday morning to 17 missed calls from my investment advisor and a text message that made my blood run cold. "Alex, call me immediately. There's been unusual activity on your account that requires verification." Still in pajamas and fighting off grogginess that felt unusually persistent, I called Marcus Williams, my financial advisor, with hands that were already beginning to shake with anxiety. Marcus and I had worked together for 3 years building my portfolio, and he had never contacted me outside business hours unless something was seriously wrong. "Alex, someone liquidated your entire portfolio at 3:47 a.m. this morning," he said without preamble, his professional calm barely masking concern. "Every stock, every bond, every cryptocurrency position, everything. The account is completely empty." The room spun around me as I tried to process what he was saying. "That's impossible. I didn't authorize any transactions. I've been asleep since midnight. According to our security systems, the trades were executed using your correct login credentials and authenticated through your registered phone number," Marcus explained. "Our fraud detection systems flagged the unusual trading volume, which is why we tried calling for verification, but we couldn't reach you." I checked my phone with growing horror and found a series of text messages sent during the night from my own number to the brokerage firm, confirming liquidation instructions and transfer authorizations. Messages I had never sent, confirming transactions I had never authorized, using language I had never written. "The accessing IP address shows the transactions originated from your current location," Marcus continued. "According to our records, you're in Savannah, Georgia, which matches where the trades were executed. Alex, I have to ask, are you certain you didn't authorize these transactions? Perhaps while intoxicated or under emotional stress? $127,000. 7 years of sacrifice, planning, and careful investment. Gone." I assured Marcus that I had not authorized any transactions and requested immediate fraud investigation protocols. He explained that the legitimacy of the access credentials would complicate the investigation, since the trades appeared to be authorized by the account holder using proper security measures. "We'll begin an investigation immediately," he promised. "But I need you to understand that recovering funds from apparently authorized transactions is extremely difficult. The transfers went to several different accounts, including one registered under the name Morrison Family Trust. Morrison Family Trust. My parents had created an investment vehicle using our family name to receive my stolen money." Stumbling downstairs in search of answers, I found Catherine in the kitchen, humming cheerfully as she prepared an elaborate breakfast spread. She looked up with a bright smile that faltered slightly when she saw my expression, but quickly recovered with practiced concern. "Alex, honey, you look terrible. Are you feeling all right? You seem very pale." "Someone liquidated my investment portfolio last night," I said carefully, watching her face for any telltale reactions. "All $127,000. Everything." Catherine's expression shifted through a series of micro-emotions that I had learned to read during childhood. Surprise, concern, calculation, and something that looked almost like satisfaction before settling on sympathetic worry. "Oh my goodness, how terrible!" she exclaimed, moving toward me with arms outstretched for a comforting hug that I instinctively avoided. "Identity theft is so common these days, especially with all these online investment platforms. You should call the police immediately and report this to your bank." "The access came from this house," I continued, studying her reaction carefully, "using my phone and login credentials." Catherine frowned thoughtfully, tilting her head in a gesture I remembered from childhood whenever she was constructing explanations for suspicious circumstances. "That doesn't make sense at all," she said slowly. "How could someone access your accounts from here? Unless—" She paused dramatically, as if a concerning possibility had just occurred to her. "Did you leave your phone unlocked somewhere yesterday? You know how careless you can be with technology when you're distracted." I had never been careless with technology in my life. Catherine knew this. My obsessive security measures around financial accounts had been a source of family jokes for years. "Where's Dad?" I asked, ignoring her suggestion that I had somehow compromised my own accounts. "He drove Emma and Brian to the airport for their honeymoon flight," she replied smoothly. "Their flight to Italy left at 6 a.m., so he had to leave here around 4. He won't be back until this evening." The timeline was convenient. David's absence during the hours when my accounts were compromised eliminated him as a potential witness to Catherine's activities, while providing an alibi that would be difficult to challenge. I spent the next 3 hours on the phone with various financial institutions, learning details about the theft that revealed careful planning and sophisticated execution. The liquidation had been executed in stages, with different asset classes sold at optimal times to minimize tax consequences and maximize the stolen amounts. Whoever had accessed my accounts understood investment taxation, market timing, and portfolio management well enough to liquidate complex holdings efficiently. This wasn't random cybercrime. It was targeted theft by someone with financial sophistication and detailed knowledge of my specific investments. The funds had been transferred to 6 different accounts, all opened within the past month using various family members' names and social security numbers. The Morrison Family Trust was the largest recipient, but smaller amounts went to accounts under Emma's name, David's business account, and something called KM Luxury Holdings. When I confronted Catherine with this detailed information, her mask finally slipped entirely, revealing the calculating predator that had been hidden beneath the loving mother performance. "You should be thanking me instead of attacking me," she said, crossing her arms defensively and abandoning any pretense of innocence. "Do you have any idea what your father and I invested in raising you? The private schools, the computers, the college fund we started when you were born?" Her voice took on the lecturing tone I remembered from childhood arguments about money and family obligations. "We invested in you first, Alex. Every piano lesson, every summer camp, every expensive piece of technology you demanded. This is just getting some of that investment back with reasonable interest." "You stole $127,000 from me," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady as rage and betrayal fought for dominance. "I reclaimed what was always ours," Catherine corrected sharply. "Everything you have, everything you've accomplished, every dollar you've earned came from the foundation we built for you. That money belongs to the family, not just to you." The conversation escalated quickly as Catherine's justifications became increasingly elaborate and detached from reality. According to her evolving narrative, I had supposedly given her my passwords years ago during a family discussion about emergency access to accounts. The money was meant to be a surprise gift to help with Emma's wedding expenses that had exceeded budget expectations. I was being ungrateful and dramatic about what was essentially a family loan that would be repaid once David's business recovered from seasonal fluctuations. "Family money is communal money," she declared with absolute certainty. "Individual accumulation creates division and jealousy. We raised you to understand that family comes first, always. Your refusal to share your success with the people who made it possible shows how selfish you've become." The elaborate rationalizations revealed years of internal justification for financial exploitation. Catherine genuinely believed that children owed unlimited financial submission to parents, regardless of age, circumstances, or impact on their own lives. In her worldview, my financial independence represented selfishness rather than achievement. David returned that evening to find me packing my belongings while simultaneously scheduling an emergency consultation with a financial crimes attorney in Austin. When Catherine explained the situation to him, his response was devastating in its predictability and casual cruelty. "You're overreacting dramatically, son," he said with the calm, condescending tone he used during accounting consultations with struggling clients. "Your mother borrowed some money for legitimate family purposes. Family members loan money to each other all the time. This isn't worth destroying relationships over." "She didn't borrow it," I replied, forcing myself to speak slowly and clearly. "She stole it. While I was asleep in your house as a guest, she liquidated my entire investment portfolio without permission." David's jaw tightened, and his accountant's precision emerged in his response. "We gave you life, Alex. We fed you, clothed you, educated you, and supported your career development. If you can't help your family when they need financial assistance, then maybe we failed in teaching you proper values." The conversation revealed that both parents viewed the theft as justified collection of debts I had allegedly accumulated through the expensive process of being their child. In their calculation, everything they had spent on my upbringing created permanent financial obligations that superseded any rights I might have to my own earned income. I left that house at 11 p.m., driving through the night back to Austin, knowing I would never return and never again subject myself to their toxic manipulation. The 8-hour drive gave me time to process the magnitude of what had happened and begin planning my response. The legal battle that followed consumed the next 18 months of my life and revealed the sophisticated planning that had preceded Catherine's theft. She had been researching my investment accounts for over a year, using information I had foolishly shared during our reconciliation conversations to understand my portfolio composition and access procedures. Catherine hired Sandra Wellington, an expensive attorney who specialized in family financial disputes and had apparently handled similar cases involving parents claiming rights to adult children's assets. Their defense strategy centered on the claim that this was a civil matter between family members rather than criminal theft, and that our family had long-standing understanding about shared financial resources. Sandra Wellington was everything I had expected from Catherine's choice of legal representation: impeccably dressed, dramatically sympathetic to her client's position, and skilled at reframing theft as family financial planning. During our first mediation session, she painted Catherine as a confused, loving mother who couldn't understand why her son was criminalizing normal family financial arrangements. Mrs. Morrison has always maintained joint financial planning with her children, Wellington argued with practiced authority. This family has a history of shared resources and mutual financial support. Alex's sudden accusation of theft represents a fundamental misunderstanding of their established family dynamics. The family rallied around Catherine with predictable solidarity that revealed how effectively she had controlled family narratives for decades. Emma, devastated that her wedding weekend had been the catalyst for this conflict, begged me repeatedly to work things out privately and avoid involving lawyers in family matters. "Can't you just accept an apology and move forward?" Emma pleaded during a tearful phone call. "She's our mother, Alex. Families forgive each other and find ways to compromise. This legal stuff is tearing everyone apart." Extended relatives who barely knew me offered unsolicited opinions about my selfishness and ungrateful nature. Catherine's social media presence painted her as the victim of a cruel son who valued money more than family relationships. Her post generated hundreds of sympathetic comments from friends, relatives, and acquaintances who knew nothing about the decades of financial manipulation that had preceded this confrontation. My attorney, Jessica Chen, was a former prosecutor who had transitioned to private practice specializing in family financial abuse cases. During our first consultation, she explained that these cases were becoming increasingly common as adult children developed financial literacy and began recognizing exploitation patterns they had normalized during childhood. "This is much more prevalent than people realize," Jessica explained while reviewing the documentation I had compiled. Parents who view their adult children's success as their own property, who believe that providing basic childhood necessities creates permanent financial obligations. The legal system is slowly catching up to recognize these patterns as abuse rather than family disputes. Jessica's investigation revealed the sophisticated extent of Catherine's planning and the calculated nature of her theft. She had been researching my investment accounts for over 18 months, using information I had shared during our reconciliation conversations to understand my portfolio composition, access procedures, and security measures. The Morrison Family Trust had been established 3 months before Emma's wedding, with David as co-trustee, an elaborate documentation designed to provide legal cover for large financial transfers. Catherine had researched estate planning, gift tax regulations, and family trust structures with the same thoroughness I had applied to building my investment portfolio. Most damaging to their defense was evidence Jessica uncovered through financial forensics that I hadn't initially considered. Catherine had used my liquidated investments to pay for luxury purchases made immediately after the theft. A $15,000 Hermes handbag purchased the morning after my accounts were emptied, a week-long spa retreat in Scottsdale booked the same day, and a down payment on a new Mercedes-Benz convertible that she had been researching for months. These purchases, documented through credit card statements, social media posts, and dealer financing records, contradicted Catherine's claims that the money was needed for family emergencies, medical expenses, or Emma's wedding costs. The evidence showed calculated theft, followed by immediate personal gratification, rather than legitimate family financial crisis. The civil case dragged on for months as Catherine's legal team employed every delay tactic available. They demanded extensive discovery, including 7 years of my financial records, employment history, college transcripts, and even psychological evaluations to establish my mental state regarding family relationships and money management. "They're trying to exhaust your resources and resolve," Jessica warned during one particularly frustrating delay. Family financial abuse cases often rely on the victim's inability to sustain prolonged legal battles. They're betting that you'll eventually accept a reduced settlement to end the stress. Meanwhile, Catherine launched a sophisticated campaign to turn extended family against me and control the narrative around our legal battle. She shared selected excerpts from legal documents that made me appear vindictive and money-obsessed, posted emotional videos about being abandoned by her own son, and organized family gatherings designed to reinforce her victim narrative. The isolation was devastating in ways I hadn't anticipated. People I had known my entire life began treating me like a stranger. Aunts and uncles who had watched me grow up now crossed the street to avoid conversations about the family situation. Catherine's version of events became family gospel. Alex had always been selfish. Alex had grown cold and distant after moving to Texas. Alex was now trying to destroy the family over money. My cousin Marcus Williams, ironically the same financial advisor who had called me about the theft, became my only family ally during this period. As a financial professional himself, he recognized the sophisticated planning behind Catherine's theft and had witnessed her bragging about gaining access to my accounts during family gatherings. "I've seen this pattern before in my practice," Marcus told me during a difficult phone call where he offered to testify on my behalf. "Catherine has been telling people for months that she had access to your accounts and that your success was really the family's success. She told Aunt Patricia last Christmas that you were finally contributing to the family through your investments." The testimony Marcus provided proved crucial to establishing premeditation and contradicting Catherine's claims about spontaneous family financial emergency. His professional credibility as a financial advisor and his status as a family member who had witnessed Catherine's statements about accessing my accounts helped anchor our case in objective reality rather than competing family narratives. The emotional toll of the legal proceedings extended beyond family relationships and began affecting every aspect of my life. Sleep became elusive as I replayed the betrayal in endless loops, questioning every childhood memory and family interaction for signs I should have recognized earlier. My work performance suffered as stress and anxiety made concentration difficult during complex programming tasks. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, my therapist in Austin, helped me understand that I was experiencing symptoms of complex trauma related to long-term family financial abuse. "Being victimized by parents creates a unique kind of psychological injury," she explained, "because it violates our most fundamental assumptions about safety, trust, and protection." The therapy sessions became essential for processing not just the immediate theft, but decades of accumulated damage from financial manipulation that I had normalized and minimized. Dr. Mitchell helped me recognize that Catherine's behavior followed classic patterns of financial abuse within families: isolation, gaslighting, exploitation, and control disguised as love. Financial abusers often target family members because family relationships provide cover for behavior that would be immediately recognized as criminal between strangers, Dr. Mitchell explained. They rely on social expectations about family loyalty and forgiveness to escape consequences for exploitation. Social media became an unexpected battlefield where Catherine's manipulation extended into digital spaces I had considered safe. Her posts about being abandoned by an ungrateful son generated hundreds of sympathetic comments from friends, relatives, and acquaintances who knew nothing about our actual history. Distant family members left comments condemning my selfishness and expressing support for Catherine's suffering. I made the difficult decision to deactivate my social media accounts temporarily, cutting off yet another connection to extended family and social networks I had hoped to maintain. The digital isolation felt necessary but painful, confirming that Catherine's influence extended far beyond our immediate family dynamics. 6 months into the legal proceedings, I experienced my first serious wavering about pursuing the case to completion. The constant stress had affected my physical health. I had lost 15 pounds, developed chronic insomnia, and suffered frequent migraine headaches that interfered with my ability to work effectively. The legal bills mounted despite Jessica's reasonable fees, and I began questioning whether recovering the money was worth the ongoing cost to my well-being. During a particularly low moment, I called Dr. Mitchell, expressing doubts about continuing the legal battle. "Maybe I should just write off the money as the cost of finally learning who they really are," I told her. "Is it worth destroying my health and career over money that's already gone?" "You could certainly choose to prioritize your immediate peace over justice," she acknowledged carefully. "No one would blame you for protecting your mental health by ending this battle. But Alex, consider what message you would be sending to yourself and to Catherine about accountability for financial abuse." Dr. Mitchell continued with insight that ultimately convinced me to persist. "Throughout your childhood and young adulthood, your parents faced no real consequences for financial exploitation. Each time they took without permission, each time they violated boundaries without apology, they learned that their behavior was acceptable. Ending this case now would confirm that pattern and potentially enable future abuse." She was absolutely right, and her perspective helped me understand that this legal battle extended beyond personal justice to breaking cycles of abuse that could affect future generations. Catherine had never faced meaningful consequences for financial manipulation, which explained why her behavior had escalated rather than improved over time. The next day, I reaffirmed my commitment to seeing the case through completion, motivated not by vengeance, but by determination to finally establish accountability for decades of financial abuse. I also implemented better self-care strategies to manage the stress of prolonged legal proceedings: regular exercise, meditation, stronger boundaries around work hours, and expanded social support systems. As the legal battle continued through summer and into fall, small victories began accumulating that reinforced my decision to persist. The bank that had processed the fraudulent transfers agreed to cooperate with our investigation and provided detailed logs showing the unauthorized access patterns. My investment brokerage firm acknowledged security failures that had enabled the theft and agreed to implement additional verification procedures. Most significantly, Jessica's investigation uncovered Catherine's previous financial manipulations that established a clear pattern of exploitation spanning decades. During discovery, we found evidence of credit cards opened in Emma's name during college, unauthorized withdrawals from David's business accounts, and a systematic pattern of borrowing from elderly relatives that was never repaid. The evidence painted a picture of chronic financial predation that extended far beyond our immediate family. Catherine had exploited anyone within her sphere who possessed financial resources, using different manipulation strategies tailored to each victim's vulnerabilities and relationship dynamics. This level of systematic exploitation demonstrates sophisticated financial abuse rather than occasional family financial stress, Jessica explained while reviewing the evidence we had compiled. The pattern shows calculation, premeditation, and escalating behavior that meets legal definitions of financial elder abuse and identity theft. The most damaging discovery came when we uncovered Catherine's attempt to access Emma's wedding gift accounts and trust funds that had been established by our grandparents for their grandchildren's major life events. Catherine had researched legal procedures for gaining access to these protected accounts and had begun the process of claiming financial emergency authority when my legal case interrupted her plans. This evidence proved that Catherine's theft from my accounts was part of a larger pattern of family financial exploitation, rather than an isolated incident driven by specific circumstances. The systematic nature of her financial abuse helped establish criminal intent rather than mere family financial misunderstanding. Emma's gradual realization that Catherine had also targeted her financial resources became a turning point in family dynamics. When Emma discovered that Catherine had attempted to claim her wedding gift money and access trust funds established for her education and home purchase, she finally understood the pattern I had been trying to protect her from for years. "I thought you were being dramatic and unforgiving," Emma confessed during a tearful phone call 8 months after the theft. "I couldn't understand why you wouldn't just accept an apology and move on. But when she tried to take my wedding money and told me it was for family expenses, I realized you were right about everything." Emma's support, when it finally came, provided emotional validation that I hadn't realized I desperately needed. Having my sister acknowledge Catherine's pattern of financial abuse helped counter the family narrative that portrayed me as the problem rather than Catherine's behavior as abusive. "I owe you an apology," Emma continued. "You tried to warn me for years, but I thought you were just being bitter. I see now that you were protecting yourself and trying to protect me too. I'm sorry I didn't support you when you needed it most." The family dynamics began shifting as more relatives learned specific details about Catherine's financial exploitation rather than her carefully crafted victim narrative. My uncle Robert, who had initially criticized my decision to pursue legal action, quietly reached out after discovering that Catherine had borrowed $3,000 from him for emergency medical expenses that turned out to be spa treatments. "I had no idea about the pattern," Uncle Robert admitted during an awkward phone conversation. "She borrowed money from me 3 different times with elaborate stories about emergencies. I thought you were being vindictive, but now I understand this has been going on for years." These individual revelations created cracks in Catherine's unified family support, though she continued maintaining her victim narrative with relatives who hadn't experienced her financial manipulation directly. The family remained divided, but the division was increasingly based on direct experience with Catherine's behavior rather than loyalty to family hierarchy. 12 months after the theft, Catherine's legal position had deteriorated significantly as evidence accumulated and witness testimony contradicted her claims of family financial emergency. Jessica presented a compelling case that combined documented theft, pattern evidence, witness testimony, and Catherine's own social media posts showing luxury purchases made with stolen funds. Rather than face a trial that would publicly expose decades of financial abuse and likely result in criminal prosecution, Catherine agreed to a settlement that required full restitution plus damages. The agreement totaled $142,000, including the original stolen amount plus interest, legal fees, and penalties for the financial and emotional damage caused by her theft. The settlement also required Catherine to publicly acknowledge that she had accessed my accounts without permission, though she stopped short of admitting criminal intent or accepting responsibility for the broader pattern of financial abuse. For Catherine, even this limited acknowledgement represented a significant given her previous absolute denial of wrongdoing. "She'll never admit to being wrong about anything," Jessica explained while reviewing the settlement terms. This acknowledgement is the closest you'll get to accountability from someone with her personality structure. The important thing is that you've recovered your money and established clear consequences for financial abuse. The money was returned through a series of asset liquidations that revealed how extensively Catherine had spent my stolen funds. Her new Mercedes was repossessed and sold, her jewelry collection was liquidated, and the expensive home renovations were financed through a second mortgage that would burden my parents for years to come. Watching Catherine face financial consequences for her theft provided some satisfaction, but the more significant victory was breaking the cycle of exploitation that had defined our family relationships for decades. For the first time in my life, Catherine had faced meaningful accountability for financial abuse, and the experience appeared to genuinely shock her. David's reaction to the settlement revealed the depth of enabling behavior that had supported Catherine's financial abuse throughout their marriage. Rather than expressing concern about his wife's theft or acknowledging the harm caused to his son, he focused entirely on the financial burden the settlement created for their household budget. "This is going to impact our retirement planning significantly," he told Emma, as if the settlement were an unexpected expense rather than consequences for theft. "Your mother made some poor decisions, but these legal fees and penalties seem excessive for what was essentially a family misunderstanding." David's inability to recognize Catherine's behavior as criminal theft rather than family financial miscommunication confirmed that he had been a willing participant in decades of financial manipulation. His primary concern was protecting their joint assets rather than addressing the pattern of abuse that had damaged both of his children. The settlement required supervised asset transfers to ensure Catherine couldn't manipulate the repayment process, and Jessica insisted on documenting every transaction to prevent future claims that repayment obligations had been satisfied through informal family gifts or loans. "Financial abusers often try to renegotiate settlements through emotional manipulation," Jessica warned. "Document everything and maintain clear boundaries about what constitutes full satisfaction of the agreement." Catherine's final communication came through her attorney in a letter that blamed me for destroying the family, accused me of being heartless and ungrateful, and predicted that I would die alone because I valued money more than relationships. The letter revealed that even facing legal consequences hadn't generated genuine remorse or insight about her behavior. Reading that letter, I felt profound sadness for the woman who could never see her children as separate people with rights to their own lives and resources. Catherine remained convinced that she was the victim in our relationship, despite overwhelming evidence of her financial exploitation and manipulation. The decision to permanently cut contact with Catherine and David came gradually as I realized that the settlement had resolved the financial aspects of our relationship, but hadn't addressed the underlying toxicity that made ongoing contact harmful to my well-being. "Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing," Dr. Mitchell explained when I struggled with social pressure to resume family relationships after the legal case ended. "You can forgive someone for your own peace of mind without allowing them continued access to harm you." The aftermath of the legal victory required extensive emotional processing that proved more complex than I had anticipated. While I had recovered my stolen money and established consequences for Catherine's abuse, the experience had also confirmed that the family relationships I had hoped to salvage were fundamentally based on exploitation rather than love. Rebuilding trust in new relationships proved challenging as I struggled with hypervigilance about people's financial motivations and questioned whether anyone could value me for reasons unrelated to my resources. Dating became particularly complicated as I found myself suspicious of anyone who asked about my job, living situation, or financial circumstances. My friend circle in Austin provided crucial support during this recovery period, particularly my roommate Jake, who helped me process the emotional toll of choosing legal action over family harmony. Through these friendships, I began understanding what healthy relationships look like when they were built on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. "You didn't choose law over family," Jake reminded me repeatedly during difficult moments. "You chose self-respect over enabling abuse. There's a difference between family and people who happen to share your DNA." 1 year after the theft, I made the difficult decision to completely cut contact with Catherine and David while maintaining careful communication with Emma. They had shown no remorse, offered no genuine apology, and continued portraying themselves as victims of my vindictiveness rather than acknowledging their role in decades of financial abuse. Emma and I gradually rebuilt our sibling relationship through family therapy conducted via video calls as she processed her own experiences with Catherine's financial manipulation and began understanding the patterns I had been trying to protect her from for years. "I thought you were just bitter about childhood stuff," Emma explained during one of our therapy sessions. "I didn't understand that the financial control was still happening and affecting both of us. I see now why you had to take legal action. The financial recovery was ultimately less significant than the personal growth that came from finally establishing boundaries with exploitative family members. My investment portfolio was rebuilt and exceeded its previous value within 18 months, but more importantly, I had developed the psychological tools necessary to protect myself from future manipulation. 2 years after the theft, I met Rebecca, a teacher who had her own complicated family history and understood the challenges of building healthy relationships after experiencing family dysfunction. Our relationship developed slowly as I learned to trust again and distinguish between normal relationship interdependence and exploitative financial expectations. Rebecca's patience with my hypervigilance around money and family issues proved that romantic relationships could exist without financial manipulation or exploitation. Her own experiences with family boundary setting helped me understand that choosing personal well-being over family expectations was a sign of strength rather than selfishness. Through Rebecca, I also connected with support groups for adults who had experienced family financial abuse, discovering that my story was far from unique and that many people had faced similar decisions about prioritizing their well-being over family loyalty. Family financial abuse is much more common than people realize. Dr. Martinez, the support group facilitator, explained during my first meeting. Parents who view their children's success as family property, who believe that providing basic care creates permanent financial obligations. You're not alone in this experience. Hearing other people's stories of family financial exploitation and recovery provided perspective on my own experience and validation for the difficult decisions I had made. Many group members had faced similar choices between maintaining family relationships and protecting themselves from ongoing abuse. The most surprising aspect of recovery was discovering how much energy I had been spending on managing Catherine's manipulation and protecting myself from financial exploitation. With those relationships permanently ended, I had emotional and mental resources available for building healthy connections and pursuing personal goals. Starting my own software consulting company became possible once I no longer needed to maintain elaborate financial security measures to protect assets from family exploitation. The business plan I had been developing for years finally moved forward as I channeled the energy previously spent on family management into entrepreneurial pursuits. The consulting company's success exceeded my projections, partly because I could focus completely on client needs and business development rather than worrying about family members gaining access to business resources. The psychological freedom of knowing that my success belonged entirely to me was transformative in ways I hadn't anticipated. 3 years after the theft, I bought a house in Austin that represented more than property ownership. It was tangible proof that I had broken the cycle of financial exploitation that had defined my childhood and young adulthood. Every mortgage payment reinforced my independence from people who had viewed my success as their entitlement. The house became a symbol of the life I had built through my own effort and determination, free from exploitation and manipulation. Having a space that was completely mine, where no one could claim financial rights or access, felt like the ultimate victory over decades of family financial abuse. Emma visited for the housewarming party and marveled at the space I had created, a home that reflected my values and interests rather than someone else's financial needs or manipulative expectations. She had also established firmer boundaries with Catherine and David, though she maintained more contact than I could tolerate. "You were right to cut them off completely," Emma told me during her visit. "I try to maintain some relationship because I feel guilty, but every conversation ends up being about money somehow. Even when I set boundaries, she finds ways to make financial requests or comments about my spending." Emma's ongoing struggles with Catherine confirmed my decision to maintain complete no contact rather than attempting partial relationships with clear boundaries. Catherine's financial manipulation was too deeply ingrained to be modified through boundary setting. It required complete separation to prevent continued exploitation. The most valuable lesson from this experience was learning that family is defined by behavior rather than biology, and that love doesn't include the right to exploit someone financially. The people who truly care about your well-being will support your independence rather than trying to control or claim your resources. 4 years after the theft, I can honestly say that ending relationships with exploitative family members was one of the best decisions I ever made. While the process was painful and the legal battle was exhausting, the psychological freedom of knowing that every relationship in my life is based on mutual respect rather than obligation has been transformative. To anyone reading this who recognizes similar patterns in their own family relationships, you have the right to protect yourself from financial abuse, even when it comes from family members. You have the right to set boundaries around your money, your time, and your emotional energy. You have the right to choose relationships that celebrate your success rather than exploiting it. The guilt and social pressure around maintaining family relationships, regardless of how harmful they may be, is intense. But your well-being matters more than other people's expectations about family loyalty. Financial independence from exploitative family members isn't selfish. It's essential for building a healthy, authentic life. Trust your instincts about people's motivations. Document financial manipulation. Seek professional help for processing family trauma. Build relationships with people who respect your boundaries rather than fighting them. Most importantly, remember that you deserve relationships based on love and mutual respect rather than exploitation and control. Financial abuse within families is real, devastating, and more common than society acknowledges. If someone is using family bonds to justify violating your boundaries or claiming your resources, they're not acting out of love, they're acting out of entitlement. You have the right to build a life that serves your own well-being rather than someone else's financial needs. The family you choose can be healthier and more loving than the family you were born into if you have the courage to prioritize respect over obligation. Recovery is possible. Independence is achievable. And the peace that comes from knowing that every relationship in your life is there because both parties choose it, rather than because biology demands it, is worth every difficult step of the journey. Have you experienced financial manipulation from family members? How did you establish boundaries while managing family expectations and social pressure? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize patterns in their own family relationships. Update: 18 months later. Thank you to everyone who shared their own stories and offered support. The response to this post has been overwhelming in the most positive way possible. Many of you asked for long-term updates, so here's where things stand now. Rebecca and I got engaged last month. She's seen me through panic attacks triggered by family-related financial anxiety and understands that healing from family betrayal is an ongoing process rather than a destination. Having a partner who respects financial boundaries and views our resources as separate until explicitly combined has been transformative for my ability to trust in relationships. My consulting company now employs 6 people and has become more successful than I ever imagined possible. The psychological freedom of knowing that my business success belongs entirely to me without family members claiming credit or access allowed me to take entrepreneurial risks that I couldn't have considered while managing family financial manipulation. Emma and I have maintained our rebuilt relationship through continued therapy and clear boundaries around family topics. She's now in her own therapy processing Catherine's financial manipulation throughout her childhood and has established much firmer boundaries with our parents, though she still maintains more contact than I can tolerate. Catherine has made multiple attempts to reestablish contact through flying monkeys, particularly around holidays and major life events. Each attempt follows the same predictable pattern: initial love bombing about missing her son, followed by justifications for past behavior, concluding with accusations about my selfishness and predictions about my future regrets. I've maintained complete no contact, which seems to be the only thing that disrupts the manipulation cycles. Any response, even negative ones, appear to encourage continued attempts at contact and control. The most significant development has been my growing involvement with Family Financial Abuse Recovery, a nonprofit organization that helps people recognize and escape financial exploitation by relatives. My story has helped other people identify similar patterns in their own families and take action to protect themselves from ongoing abuse. I've also started speaking at financial literacy workshops specifically about family financial abuse, helping young adults recognize warning signs and develop protective strategies before exploitation patterns become entrenched. The response has been incredible. Many people express relief at having their experiences validated and named as abuse rather than normal family dynamics. To those of you who are still in situations with financially abusive family members, start documenting everything now. Keep records of loans that are never repaid, gifts that are demanded rather than given, and manipulation tactics used to access your resources. You deserve relationships that celebrate your success rather than exploiting it. The house I bought has become a sanctuary that represents complete independence from financial manipulation. Every design choice, every purchase, every improvement reflects my own values and preferences rather than someone else's financial agenda. Having a space that is completely mine, where no one can claim rights or access, continues to feel like victory over decades of family financial abuse. Most importantly, I've learned that the people who truly love you will respect your autonomy and support your right to control your own resources. Financial independence from exploitative family members isn't just about money. It's about reclaiming your right to make decisions about your own life without someone else's approval or interference. Peace and solidarity to all the family scapegoats and financial abuse survivors reading this. You're not alone. You're not overreacting, and you deserve so much better than what you've been given. Recovery is possible. Independence is achievable, and the life you build for yourself can be healthier and more authentic than anything your family of origin could provide. Stay strong, set boundaries, and remember that family is defined by behavior rather than biology. The people who earn the title of family are those who demonstrate love through respect, support, and celebration of your independence, rather than exploitation of your resources. If this story resonated with you, please consider supporting organizations that help people escape family financial abuse. Recovery is easier with community support and professional guidance, but it starts with recognizing that you deserve better treatment than you've been receiving.